So do you want to tell me a few of the elements of the lesson that you thought went well?
I think partner work is a really big thing for the class I'm in anyway, just because they just, I think some of them need like someone else's opinion and like some ideas of how to do something, so I put quite a lot of partner work in it. And then I put different challenges on different tables, so the really like investigation-y, tricky ones were with the hires for like extending their learning on, and then obviously like the table I was working with, we literally just did, Zoe, she finds it hard to process words, like worded problems anyway, so I was speaking to her LSA and she said she wouldn't be able to do it, so just get her some like simple number sequences and things like that.
And that's really good, adapting the task so that they're still meeting the learning question but changing it so it can be achievable by different groups of children. Really important. Yeah, fantastic. You were talking about the talk actually, weren't you? And actually that was one thing when we came into the lesson and we sat down and the starter was just really engaging. There was just this lovely mathematical sort of buzz. Sometimes you walk into a room and you hear talking like, is what's going on? But actually we walked in and the task was great, and as soon as you set them off and you asked them to do the partner talk, the talk was great. They were talking mathematically, they were disagreeing with each other at times, but that's what you want with maths. That's high quality maths talk. And they were saying, "No, I think it's this, and I think it's this." How do you think what sort of progress do you think they made at that in that first bit of the lesson? How were you sort of judging what was going on?
I was going around and asking them, and then I noticed a few of them were getting the path right, but they were miscalculating their numbers. So that's why I stopped it and did like a little mini thing, just to say you might be getting the path right, but you're not doing your calculations right. So just to let them check it. Yeah. With the table I was working with, I gave them a lower number to find, so they didn't have to count as much, or it wouldn't have been as tricky. The path would have been a bit easier. Yeah,
fantastic. And how was that? What was the previous lesson to that? How were they building on their prior knowledge?
So we did, it's all been a bit jumbly. We were just doing investigations this week. So yesterday we did a little bit on sequencing. So I knew that they could sequence in multiples of however many. They could do it on like a number line. They could do just saying it to them, things like that. They could even find it in some investigation. So I thought the only thing they do need work with is to put it into a scenario, like worded problems. So that's where we got that from today.
So you were interpreting the word problems and into sequences. And I think those word problems were really, really well. The ones you went through on the board were really well designed, very sort of engaging for the children. As soon as you ask them that question of what's going on here, what happens after the first step, the fourth, straight away you set them off. And again, the partner talk was great, and they were really, really focused and talking about what they had to do, and that was really good. In terms of the board, just be really, really careful, because I think there was a typo. Actually, if I do that occasionally, no, that occasionally happens, and if that happens, I sometimes will just say, "Oops, I've made a mistake. Someone help me correct it." And actually, that's okay. It happens. So don't worry. Sometimes I say, "Oops, I've made a mistake," and I'll just correct it. And actually, you're sort of modelling to the children. Everyone's going to make mistakes, and actually, it's good to correct them as well. The task was really, really nice, and that starter task really had them engaged. And you were sort of explaining sequences. So how did you support the children with they answered the question, but then how did you support? I think someone made a mistake, and how are you supporting the children understand those sequences?
So
and how did that work?
I asked them to not just find the answer, but explain like how they did it, like break it down into, because I think some of them it was like it was this amount on Monday, it was this amount on Tuesday, how much is it on Friday, but some of them weren't. We needed to find all the processes first rather than just jump into the Friday. So it was to make sure that they knew exactly how they were doing it. And there was like a couple of ones where they weren't reading the question as they should have been, so it was doubling from the day that, what was it? Like doubling every day that you come onto, or something like rather than the first one.
And what particularly that child, what could you have done to just to make it clearer for them? because you sort of went
Yeah.
on to do it on the next question, sort of on
Sort of
a
like,
leading question.
Maybe like maybe gone back to her and asked, how would I do this one now then, with like the knowledge that you've
Yeah, definitely.
been picked up on
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Or something like that.
And excellent, and addressing misconceptions like that, really, really important. And yeah, doing that would be great. And then on the next one, you didn't model it on the first one,
No.
which might have been nice, but the second one, you modelled it, and I think that really helped. It was really nice because the children could see clearly what was happening to the numbers. I think they were doubling on that one.
Yeah.
So they were doubling, and there was just this moment of brilliance where really, really good. And actually, sometimes teachers who are training don't do this; they just move on quickly. But somebody made a mistake with the doubling,
Yeah.
and you paused and you sort of really delve into it and found out where the mistake was. And I think it was Sian. I think you asked her.
Yes.
I think you said, "Oh, how are you doing that?" And she was just so articulate. The maths language was so rich, and I think she said, "Oh, I partition the 96 into a 90 and a 6, and then I double the 90 and I double the 6, put them back together again." Because that is such a classic misconception of not bridging through and being 10 short. So that was really nice, and actually having it visually on the board was great. And I really like the way actually that you then used a child to come up and do the addition as well, to do the calculations. That was great. It sort of just shows a good subject knowledge for the maths as well, that you're sort of demonstrating all of that and talking that through. So yeah, the activities were really nice and engaging, and the children were really, really focused. How do you think the talk partners helped with those sort of starter activities?
I think it just got them thinking about that there's not always going to be one right answer, like you can find other ways around it and things like that. I did have to keep on top of because sometimes when you're not around them, they can find the answer, especially the tops, they can find the answer and then just chat. So I had to be like, then I went over a couple of times and gave them like a bit of an extension on the question that they were doing, things like that, just to keep on top of them a little bit.
Yeah, that's really good. Talk me through a little bit. So then you sort of went on to the main section. Talk me through a little bit about sort of how you decided to deploy your adult, or how you decided to sort of deploy yourself. What was sort of the rationale behind that?
I moved them around into the groups that they would have been in sets.
Okay.
So there was some tops on this table, but then some of the ones that do need a bit more support were on the set just below, and then it went round. So then I got more like investigation questions for the tops. The lows, like I said, I got ones like these, and then I did just like one chili challenge for the slightly a little bit more, and then 2 and then 3, just to differentiate.
So each table had the same activity,
just a little bit
but
trickier.
a bit different, a bit more
Yeah.
challenging. And how do you think that sort of helped them work if they had the same activity? Why do you think that was it's a bit of a leading question I'm asking you there. In terms of what did you notice as the children were solving the questions? Because it obviously wasn't completely silent, but what?
They were using like their partners.
Which isn't necessarily a good thing.
They were using their partners to chat and
Yeah.
to think about how they'd get to the right answer. So some of the people on the table, they might have understood the question, whereas some of the ones on the table didn't. So then those more ones were helping them out.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no, that was definitely happening. That was very, very clear. You could see they were very enthused and they were supporting each other. I really liked the fact that you decided you wanted to go and work with the lower ability children, and actually for when the sort of the procedural things like handing out the work you gave to LSA to do, and that's great because you're the person who's leading the session, the lesson. You should be the person who's giving the support for the children who need it, and always good to do that. And just sometimes you rotate those groups so that you can work with different groups. If you have 5 tables, you have 5 days of the week. It's quite nice to target a different table each week. But yeah, that was really nice that you did that. So then they're onto the sort of their independent part of the lesson. So talk to me about how you sort of feel that they achieved once they were doing their word problems on their tables. Are there any groups that you feel maybe need more support or anything like that?
I think the more able table that weren't doing the investigations, they were given quite tricky questions, which I think if they were working on their own, then maybe they should have been given slightly less.
Challenge is good.
Yeah, I think there was just a couple. Maybe I should have gone through a couple on the board. There was a couple that the sequence was going up and then down, and then so it might be going up 5, down 4, up 3, things like that. So I think maybe like modelling that on the board, so they knew that the sequences could change. They're not always going in one set way. Maybe that would have helped them a little
definitely. More. Modelling some of the sequences definitely could have helped. When they've got different ones, one thing you can do is you can sort of almost do a mini table plenary where you go to a specific table who've got the thing you want to show them, and you just stop them for a second and maybe model it with a whiteboard like this, and you're sort of showing them.
Okay.
Because it all depends on, you don't want to interrupt the flow of the lesson if they're all doing slightly different things. Yeah. However, you do want to have mini plenaries, so that it's sometimes the mini plenaries are sharing someone who's doing the right thing, or which you were doing a little bit of, but once you got onto the independent bit of the lesson, it was just started to slide a little bit, and actually just giving them a bit of a refocus. It could have been doing another sequence on the board and talking it through, or it could be just something that gets them back into that frame of mind of solving the sequences. Did you notice any children who needed a bit more support or help?
Yeah, Nico did. And then Roma on the table behind me. So I did bring her onto my table to go through it. Yeah. But yeah, Nico definitely needs a bit more help.
One thing just to be aware of once you have that focus table in, is just being as vigilant as you can, and just it's those teacher glances where you're just looking around and just seeing. At one point, I think Nico actually said, "I need help," to no one in particular. He just sort of just went, "I need help." Just realised. So it happens. Don't worry, it happens. And actually, the really loud, noisy table were really focused and really working well. And actually, some of the quieter ones are sometimes the ones to keep an eye out for. And they won't always just come and tell you. You think, well, why have you not come to either your LSA or you? But they don't always. So sometimes just keeping an eye out for that. So that's one thing just to be vigilant of when you're doing your focus group. And then in terms of the progress, so you talked a bit about the sort of the differentiation, but in terms of the progress, you identified Nico and Roma as how do you think the children got on generally? Do you think they achieving? Yeah,
I think overall they were. I had a quick look at some of their work. Max in particular, he's someone that likes to get the work done quickly. So there was a couple of times he'd come up to me and say, "Oh, have I got it right? Have I got it right?" I think it was here. They had to get one of the same numbers. Each number had to have the same number next to it at least once, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But he came over about 4 or 5 times. He said, I've done it. But each time he hadn't got one of the numbers next to it.
And he actually asked me the same question. I said, "Well, ask your partner, talk to your partner." And actually when he did that, he actually, sometimes that they then find their own errors and make their own corrections. But that's good that you're spotting sort of where the children are up to and the progress that they're making. So that's really good. In terms of the pacing of the lesson, how do you think it went?
I would have liked for them to have swapped books and just marked a couple of the others' pieces of work, just to see what someone was doing differently or something like that. But
and it's a really, really nice idea for the plenary actually, because each table had a different activity. So they all knew what the answers could and should be. So actually, having that time to do that, just make sure that you plan that time. I think at the point where you put 6 minutes on the board, you probably didn't need to put 6 minutes on the board, you probably could have put 2. And then that would give them just that quality, reflective, analysing time where they're evaluating both their partner but also how they're getting on. It doesn't always have to be a written evaluation. Just be careful when you get to the end of the lesson, because you sort of went, "Oh, I think I'll do it," as they are standing up. And actually, what really impressed me is at one point you realise, "Hang on, this isn't quite what I want," and you were really firm with them. And I think there were some girls who were chatting, and you went, "No, girls, stop!" But that is required. If that is needed, that's needed. So that's good. But I'm glad that you reflected. Actually, maybe a bit more time sat down. But quality reflection time is so important. So that's really good. So your targets from last time were just looking at meaningful resources. Now, actually, that first starter activity was just wonderful. It was a really lovely resource. And actually, the children didn't need any behaviour management at that point, because they were so engaged with it, they were so enjoying it. And even the likes of Nico, who was struggling, not at the start, he had whiteboard in hand and he was loving it. So that activity was great. Max said to me, which I thought was quite interesting, I said to him, how are you solving this? And he said, I'm just going around the edge. This is the number square. I'm going around the edge, and then I'm going on to the next one, and going on to the next one. And I asked him, it's almost like it'd been set up, but I'm sure he hadn't been. I said to him, how are you doing that? He said, I'm using a systematic approach. And I said, and where have you learnt about systematic approaches? And he said, well, I learnt it from, I've forgotten your surname, I'm really sorry. Miss Howlett yesterday. I was like, oh, perfect. That's brilliant. Miss Howlett. Yeah, that was just a lovely moment, actually. So, but yeah, the resources are great. And actually the word problems were really, really well designed because, as I sort of alluded to right at the beginning, they were what I call a stretchy maths question, because at the one end of the scale you are just halving the number, but at one point if you keep halving that number you get to a really horrible decimal number, and some of the children were just naturally trying to find out what would happen on the 10th, 11th, 12th day. So it was just a really, really clever put together question. Often those doubling and halving questions are great, and actually sometimes you pull out those misconceptions about decimals and all sorts of things. So no, I definitely think you met that target. I think that was really, really strong. And I noticed you doing that formative assessment when you were going around, and at that starter you were checking on what the children knew. You did a mini plenary when you realised some of them were adding incorrectly, which was great. So that's that sort of that teacher moment where you go, they're not quite doing that right, I want them to, so I'm going to get them all back together. So, I mean, the main targets that I had were just giving enough time for that quality plenary, because it is really, really important. And just during that independent section of the lesson, just from time to time scanning the room, just assessing those groups of children. The noisiest ones aren't always the ones who are off task. It's sometimes need reminding that as well, that it's sometimes they're noisy and they're on task and they're loving it, and actually sometimes the quiet ones are the ones to keep an eye out for. So just glancing around and then just intervening where you need to. So those were the two targets that I had, and that was pretty much it. It was a really lovely lesson. I can just see the progress that you're making, so it's very, very impressive. I love the mannerisms that you have with the children. It's very, just the buzz. I used the word buzz again. I just loved the learning buzz that was going on, and you could see the children making progress. You could see the children enjoying the lesson, and I think I could see you really enjoying the lesson as well, which I think was really nice.
Yeah, no doubt.
So that's great. So thank you very much. No, it was a lovely lesson.
Congratulations.
Yeah, great. Yeah, really, 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 really strong. So well done. I was going to go through a few paperwork type things, just a few ideas for what we could do over the next couple of weeks after half term. And I thought it might be quite nice to go to the infant school and see some sessions over there. I don't think you've been over yet, so we should try and organise that. And you've got your trip coming up after half term. It's Golden Hind, isn't it? Yeah. So what might be really helpful, as all teachers have to do this at some point, is just have a look at the risk assessment. Look at how one is put together, why we have risk assessments, and because at some point you're going to have to write a risk assessment. So every school has a slightly different one, but it just might be quite useful to see. I think Penny will be writing those, so just go and speak to her about that. And one last thing, just before Rachel leaves us forever. It's very sad, but she's in charge of PPG, and I thought it might be nice just to have a chat about what she does for the PPG pupils around school. She has a little tracking grid, and it might be nice just to see the ones that are in your class, see what's being tracked for them as well. All right, and I'll organise that for Rachel and with the infants, and if you talk to Penny about the risk assessment, and I think we're going to have a look at your midterm review.
Yes, that's the next thing.
Shall we do that?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.